Welcome to week number 3 of our series titled Needy. And this is the only Mass that I'm assured has had all of the messages, because I always am at the 10. But I'm still going to do a little bit of a review, so bear with me. What we've been speaking of up until now is that there is a God, and it's not you or me. God is God precisely because he is completely self-sufficient in himself. We have needs that we must attend to if we are to thrive and to survive. In fact, our entire being, by its very nature, is a collection of neediness, some simple and complex, some easily attainable and completely out of reach at other times. Think about all the needs that you have. Think of physical needs. And then you have a need to be understood, a need for acceptance and encouragement. You need self-confidence, self-esteem. You need meaning and purpose. We need to work and to rest. And the list is endless. And on top of those needs, there are spiritual needs. God has created us with needs. He passes on to us the responsibility to tend to them. And doing that outweighs almost every other responsibility that we have. On the surface, that sounds selfish, but actually it's common sense, because we can't help anyone else until we've taken care of ourselves. If we burn out, we have nothing left to give, and we eventually then become someone else's problem. On the other hand, when we do take care of ourselves, we're more effectively able to care for others. So caring for yourself first can and should be preparation for service to others. Here's what Jesus had to say. He said, one time someone asked him, what was the most important thing of all, the most important thing ever? What was the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. As yourself. We've talked about some of the temptations that we face when it comes to meeting our needs. The first temptation is to meet those legitimate needs in illegitimate ways. The second is to meet them through shortcuts. The third temptation is to meet our needs by worshiping them, turning our needs into gods, if you will, make them the entirety of our lives, to give them our total attention, our total affection, to pursue them at all costs. Today, we're going to talk about two needs that go together. They are meant to live in rhythm between one another. And life is a constant switching back and forth between them. And to learn about these needs, we're going to look at a passage from the book of Exodus where God gives the 10 Commandments. Don't worry, we're not going to talk about all 10. Okay, I'm just going to talk about one. But it's important to note that the 10 Commandments, God does not give them as a condition for having a relationship with him, but rather in the context of a relationship. God didn't say, do these 10 things and then we'll talk. God delivers these commandments to the Israelites only after he had demonstrated his power by parting the sea, rescuing them from the Egyptians. He delivers the commandments only after he has blessed them abundantly in every way. Only then does he give them the commandments. And the commandments themselves reveal God's priorities. They show that God is not only powerful, but he's good. And God gives 10 commandments really for more successful living. They are elements of good living. So, the one command that we're going to look at today is the third commandment. Some people are going, which one is that? I forget which one. It's been, third grade I learned this stuff. So here's the third commandment. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath. 6 days you may labor, do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, and no work may be done by you. And the commandment goes on to explain, in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that's in them. But on the seventh day he rested, and that is why the Lord has blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So God works for 6 days. He creates the heavens, the earth. He creates everything. Then he creates the crown jewel of his creation, human beings, in his image and in his likeness. And then, after the work of creation, God rests. Why? Is God tired? Is he worn out? No, he rests to set the pace, the pattern for how he wants us to live, the proper rhythm in which we function best. So let's take a look at this plan. He begins with work. At one point, there was no creation, so he decides to get to work and create something. Not because he was bored or had nothing to do, but out of the expansiveness of his love and his grace. So he gets to work, and since we are made in the image of likeness of God, we are also made to work. Notice the commandment says, 6 days you may labor and do all your work. The commandment assumes an inclination towards work, as if it is something we will naturally desire. Work is not a curse that's a result of sin. It's not some kind of punishment, although it may seem that way at times. Work is actually part of the plan. It is written into the very act of creation. It's carved on our souls because, remember, we've been made in the image and likeness of God. So we not only need the produce or the profit of our work, we actually need the process of working. So it's important, I think, that we view work in the correct way. And there are probably more, but I think of 3 different ways to look at work. One is to see work as a job. A job looks at something as simply a way to pay the bills, to supply our needs. I was there for years, and it's terrible. I mean, you just hate getting up Monday. You're looking for Friday night already. And when all is said and done, that kind of work is not very satisfying. Now, another way to look at work is a career. You know, you're in a law firm, so you're working towards partner, or you're a CPA and you're working towards partner. It's moving up the ladder. It's making a name for yourself, building a nest egg. This attitude towards our work might pamper us, might feed our egos, might fill our bank accounts, but it doesn't really satisfy, not as in satisfying the soul. The other way to look at work is a vocation. People who see their work as a calling see meaning and purpose in their work beyond themselves. They recognize the real gifts that they have in service to a greater good, to a higher purpose. And that kind of work can be soul satisfying. And ultimately, if we have it, it's given by God. We need to have soul-satisfying work. But that's only part of the plan. Work is also matched with rest. Rest gives you the opportunity to enjoy the blessings that God provides. And God, once again, sets the example in his creation. Genesis tells us that after God creates everything, he says, he proclaims it is good. And then he stops creating, and he rests. Not just recreation, though it can be that. Not a vacation where you come back more exhausted than when you left. Not just running around to a lot of kids' sports. Through sports and physical activity obviously have their place. And not just entertainment or distractions. As I said, sometimes we can't wait to get to the weekend. But those of you with families, even that is not rest. I can't imagine having little kids running around all weekend. That's work, but it's work with a purpose and it's work with love. Soul-satisfying work has to be matched, though, with soul-satisfying rest. And soul-satisfying rest refreshes the soul and the spirit, and it leaves us refreshed and equipped to return to work. But to find that kind of rest, we also need God. And that's why elsewhere in Psalm 23, David says, "The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures." Sheep need to be led to rest. They have to be made to lie down. And at times, as it says in Handel's Messiah, we are like sheep. We cannot find rest on our own. We need to be led to it. We need God to lead us to rest. And that begins with, for you at least, weekend worship, coming to Mass. For me and Father Adam, that's soul-satisfying work, but still. But when you make being here a priority, as many of you do now, you're putting your trust in God, that He will lead you to a place of rest. For our part, one of our priorities in putting together this weekend experience for you, the team, the greeters, the music, the Eucharistic ministers, all of the planning, that helps serve the purpose that maybe somehow you can leave here encouraged and equipped, perhaps even a little inspired to go back out into your life and work. God has built into us these two dual needs, work and rest. When you hear this message, you probably tend towards knowing that right now you have the need for one of those more than the other. Maybe you're working a job that's just a job, it's not a calling. You don't find it at all soul-satisfying. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make a change. Maybe you just need to look at what you're doing in a different light. The perspective, perhaps, of the greater impact that your work has, or the giftedness that you have to do it. Or maybe God is calling you to something else. Maybe that dissatisfaction is leading you, prodding you to look in a different direction. Maybe God's calling you to work in a nonprofit. Maybe God is calling you to priesthood or religious life. For some of you, this isn't an issue at all. If you love your work and you enjoy it, then take some time this week to thank God, because that is a great gift. Maybe you're a student and all of this is still before you. Or you're retired and you're not sure how this applies. Take it to prayer. Prayerfully consider what your work is and what it will be. Maybe you've heard this message and you realize that you need more rest. Maybe you really don't have a Sabbath, a day where you really get to rest. Maybe you are tired right down to your soul, and you realize that your pace of life is just not sustainable. ask God to help you find rest, to lead you to that place of rest. Knowing your needs and taking the time to meet them is not selfish. It is living in the reality that we are children of God and that He made us needy so that we will eventually come to understand this. Our greatest need is for Him.